Today I'm going to show you how to write a two-voice poem, or sometimes we call it a dual-voice poem. And what I'm going to do is take you step by step through how to write one of these poems. But before we do that, I want you to have a better understanding of exactly what a two-voice poem is. So first, it has two very distinct voices. Those voices can appear in two different columns. So you'll have the first column for the first voice, the second column for the second voice. Each column can be read on its own and make sense, yet when you combine the two, you can read them from left to right. So you would read the first line in the column, first column 1, and then move to column 2 to read the same the first line in the next poem, and you work your way through the poem that way. These poems reveal conflict or confusion, and that's why this genre is very interesting, this way of writing a poem, because it is very easy to build that conflict or that confusion. These poems reveal opposing viewpoints. They sometimes have three columns, and those poems are very interesting in that you have these two distinct voices, these two distinct viewpoints. But at times, just like when you write an argument essay, you do have some common ground, I'm going to call it that, um, where where you can share the same voice. And so you'll have this middle um, column that brings those two voices right together for you. And I'm going to show you a poem in just a second. I have somebody reading it for you. It's a poem written about an American Indian by the name of John Ross and Andrew Jackson, where they had two opposing viewpoints on the American Indian, yet at some point they do come together and have this common ground that they share. You are going to have to choose the right form for your story, and we're going to talk about picking the right genre later on, and we'll talk more about this form when we get together on site. But what I want to do is look at some examples and then share with you some of the ideas that some of my former students used for their oral history project. And what I want you to see is that this isn't a difficult form to replicate at all. So I'm going to begin you right here. This is the form that they're going to read. This is the John Ross and Andrew Jackson poem where they have the three columns. And I really like this poem visually because that middle column lends itself to us understanding that they did share some common ground, whether or not they wanted to share that common ground. So what I want you to do now is to listen to the two girls read the poem, and then I'll come back and talk to you some more.
I am Chief John Ross of the Cherokee Nation.
I'm Andrew Jackson, President of the United States. The destiny of the Indian is of great concern and importance.
We, the Cherokee, reject the idea that we cannot live among the white settlers peacefully.
All experiments from the improvement of the Indian situation have failed.
We have already adopted the white man's dress, language, customs, and even religion.
The Indian cannot live contract with civilized humanity.
We should avoid the calamity that happened to the Mohegan, Delaware, and Narragansett people. The Cherokee, under any circumstance, have no weapon to use by argument. If that should fail, we must submit.
All tribes must eventually move to lands beyond the Mississippi, by force if necessary.
The encroachment of white settlers onto Indian lands is an endless flow. I still strongly hope we shall find ultimate justice from the people of the United States.
There they can find countless herds of buffalo, and in a short time adapt to their own habits.
Into the new lands, white should not purse the Indian.
The next few poems that you're going to read are actually representative of poems written by my former students. And as you read each of the poems, what I want you to do is to think about the conflicting ideas each of those poems present. What I'm going to do is I'm going to only pause each slide for about 5 seconds. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you actually pause your button so that you can read it and take your time reading the poems, and then jotting down notes or ideas about perhaps how you can take their ideas and bring them back into your own, and then just move on to the next. Start your presentation again and move on to the next poem. So what your assignment will be is that you're going to use for this practice, because that's what we want to do, is practice this before we actually do it for our project. So what I want you to do is use your interview notes from our broadcast that we did, and I want you, with your parent, I want you to write a dual voice poem about the individual you interviewed. And then what I want you to do is to bring your poem to our next broadcast so that we can share those experiences, and you can come with questions then about problems maybe that you're going to or will run into while you're trying to write in this form. If you would note, I'm going to walk you through the steps of step by step how to write these two voice poems, because I know some of you really are worried, like, I'm not a poet, I don't want to do this, I can't believe that she wants me to do this, but it's an easy way to write a poem, I believe, and I can take you step by step, and I will take you step by step through it on this presentation, but I'm also going to attach or put up onto Blackboard directions handsheet or worksheet that actually says the same thing. So if you would prefer not listening to me and just looking at the sheet, you're free to do that, but I am going to talk the students through each of the slides just in case I can add to any of the information that I've already given. So the very first thing you're going to need to do is, after you look at your notes, you need to choose the subject or conflict of the theme you want to focus on. So I want you to look at your notes and think, oh, what kind of conflict or maybe even confusion did she express or he express that I could focus on? And then I need you to decide on the voices. Are they really two different people, or are they just two voices within themselves, or yourself in this case? I want you to remember that the two voices express contrasting views, so the voices can't be the same voice. You need to think about how they're going to be different. You're going to go to your interview notes, and you are going to go to your interview notes, and you're going to look at the ones you know that from the broadcast, and then you're going to make a list of words or phrases you would associate with each of the voices. For instance, in the soldier's conflict that you read, she focuses on child, saving, help, and then daughter, wife, help. And the whole poem is focused around those key words. And then you're going to use those words, those key words, to draft your, make your first draft. Now, when you actually start writing, what I want you to do is to take a sheet of paper, put this up so that you don't start reading ahead. Take a sheet of paper and like set them side by side, and each one is going to be for a voice. And even though you're going to write these two separate poems, what I think you need to do is write a dialogue between the two. And the only reason why I'm telling you to use two pieces of paper is it's going to remind you it's two voices, okay? So you can write your poem as dialogue between the two voices, or have each voice describe itself, its characteristics, or its viewpoint, or its point of view, but try to present your ideas sort of as a balance between those two columns. And if you get caught up and you're not sure, go back and look at those poems that I've given you before. Then you're going to alternate between the voices every line or sentence, right? You're going to write the left-hand column, then you're going to write the right-hand column. And then if each side shares some aspect of the conflict, you can add a third column like John Ross and Andrew Jackson does. I think that's very unique, but I like that if you can see sometimes that your voices blend together. I remember one of the poems that one of my students wrote was on the Iraq War, comparing it to the Afghanistan War. And at the very end, the two wars blended together, and they were exactly the same war that this person felt. And I thought that was a very visually interesting way to express how the wars held the same characteristics. And then when you begin revising, and only when you begin revising and editing, then you can look at maybe some rhyme scheme or meter or assonance or alliteration, anything that you think will build the cohesiveness or the overall effect of the poem is a good idea. And if you need help with that, we can help you with that in class, or at one of my tutoring sessions if you want to come for that. That is the polishing off part of the poem that we will work on. So again, one of the things I want to say to you is I want you to have fun with this, because it is fun, and it's a great way to express some sort of conflict or opposing viewpoints. And it's not the kind of poem that is so formalistic that you're caught up in trying to figure out rhyme scheme or meter. It can be simply quotes that you're taking from each side of the issue and putting it together, and it will draw that conclusion for you, that overall effect that you want from the poem. Okay, so my last bit of advice is write, and then bring your writing into class, and we will share and have a good time with this.